Thanks for joining us for Week 4 of Ask Bill. First question of this week comes from Steve Vogler. Salespeople seem to really whine more each day. It can be about quality of leads, competition, compensation, the weather, so on. They seem to expect more to just fall into their laps instead of working harder. Do you have any suggestions on ways to rectify these behaviors?
Boy, do I have some answers for this one, Steve. Let me give you the first one. It's not good news. Here it is. The secret to eliminate whining is to never allow whining to occur in the first place. Now, here's the problem. The toothpaste is already out of the tube. So, in the case where it's out of the tube, let me give you the bad news. You're going to need to face this issue. And you're going to need to face this issue sometimes in a group setting, sometimes in an individual setting. What you're going to do is eliminate the real issues from those that are perceptive issues. For example, a real issue might be a quality of a lead or the number of leads. The compensation plan, perhaps you can't do much about. People talking about the competition. Most of the things that comes from competition, sour grapes, it travels over the grapevine and it's just sour. So this is going to sound crazy. You need to confront the issue. And if that means someone's embarrassed, if they're belittled by it, so be it. I had a situation recently where, frankly, in a business environment, I lost a friend because I told him, why don't you start being more proactive and positive and stop being this negative backbiter? And frankly, I was just as happy to confront the issue because I'm not going to let the inmates run the asylum. What you want to do is understand some recent research was done, and here was the research. What it said was a positive, buoyant attitude is not what's important. What's important is the elimination of a negative attitude. And the problem you have with the whining and the moaning and the crowing is that it creates a culture, and that culture in your environment is one of negativity, and that becomes easily communicated. You need to have regular sales meetings and allow these salespeople to expunge their pain. Be non-judgmental. Don't come down on them. You need to find things out. If you're hearing something, say, one of the things that I heard that's happening is a complaint about this or a complaint about that. Have the facts. If someone's complaining about leads, you need to know what percentage of the leads absolutely close. You need to know how many of them buy over a long period of time. You need to cite success stories that came from those leads. Deal with the issues as they come up. Now, in terms of compensation, perhaps you need to be the ombudsman for the entire sales force. If enough people complain about it, there's a problem. But then you need to get the facts and you need to deal with it. The bottom line is you can't create a dependent society. And you have to stop this stuff. And you have to be very careful, Steve, yourself, that you know your job as sales manager or VP of sales or director of sales means that you're in management. You're not with these folks. You're between the two. If it's a valid situation, represent it to other managers. If not, squelch it, but deal with the facts.
Next question comes from Leroy. He asks, Bill, I manage a small sales group of 8 people and report directly to the CEO. Before hiring me, the CEO acted as a sales manager also. My question is, how do I get the CEO to leave my salespeople alone? He hounds them just like he used to, but that is what he hired me to do. I've asked him several times to just let me do what you hired me for, but he still calls the salespeople constantly. As you can imagine, the salespeople are getting more frustrated because it seems like they now have 2 bosses. Also, some advice I give is in direct opposition to what the CEO said to do. Any advice would sure be appreciated.
This is a real problem, and it exists quite often. Part of the problem is, let's just accept the fact. The CEO is changing a behavior pattern that he or she was involved with for many, many years. And changing habits are very difficult. Now, having said that, you need to learn how to manage your boss. Now, hear what I'm saying. I'm not talking about you learning how to manage your sales force, how to manage your boss. And I'm going to give you 6 or 7 ways that might be helpful for you to do that. Let me give you the first one. You need to find out from your boss, what phase of the sales process do you want me to handle, and what phase do you want to handle? Now, don't be surprised if the person doesn't say, I want you to handle it all. And then what you need to be able to do is to come back and say, okay, if that's the case, one of the things that's happening is I'm getting some feedback that this or that is happening. Now, I'm going to tell you, your boss will respect you a lot more for standing up and clarifying that than you allowing that person to run over what it is you need to do. The second thing is you need to set up some sort of weekly meeting with your CEO, with your boss, to bring him or her up to speed. And yes, you have to be your own cheerleader. And when your own cheerleader, you need to tell them what's going right, some progress is being made, the status of accounts, things are moving along in a certain account, where you're hung up in an account. What you need to do is reposition that CEO and say, look, we really need you to help us. And you call on the CEO to help in sales situations where it becomes C to C selling, CEO to CEO. Bring the person up to date weekly, and now they'll start to feel more confident in you and your sales force. You may want to really ask your sales manager, or excuse me, your CEO this question. Do you really want a sales manager? Because the truth of the matter is, what he or she may need is someone who's a sales liaison or sales coordinator. Do they still see themselves as being VP of sales or CEO? I think the biggest issue is the confidence level that you need to communicate to that person, and I think they'll start to leave you alone. You also then need to ask the CEO this question, and this is very critical. What are the metrics that you need to have so you feel confident that I'm able to manage this sales force? And what you want are what we call in-process versus end-result metrics. What you want to find out is, what do you want? Do you want the number of phone calls, the number of contacts, the status of accounts, the projections on closing dates, the percentage of possibility for closing? And then you need to sit down every week and give that information to that CEO. And once he or she finds out that the job's a little bit easier than haranguing all of these salespeople, now what happens is it may improve. The next one is that you really need to be able to be in a position to provide great value to that CEO. Information, knowledge, data, feet, legs on the street, insight into prospects, insight into accounts, having a strategic view, insight into your salespeople that perhaps he or she did not have in the past. You have to bring great value. And that will then allow you to show great value for yourself. And you need to then become a very strong field sales manager. The stronger you are, the more dependent that person will the more dependent that person will get on you. Now remember this. The correlation is very simple. Your security is based upon how difficult it is to replace you. And if he or she feels like they can do the job without you, you become more vulnerable. So here are 6, 7, 8 strategies that I think if you'll implement them may help you a great deal to manage your boss.
And the final question for this week comes from David Donald. What is the best way to handle call reluctance on an individual basis?
The key word there was individual basis. The reason for sales call reluctance on an individual basis could lie inside of that person. Now listen carefully. It could be lack of achievement drive, lack of self-starting ability, lack of a belief in sales, lack of commitment to the profession. It could be a sense of lack of direction. It could be a low sense of self-worth. It could be lots of reasons. And unless you have some sort of an assessment that allows you to uncover that, you're not going to be able to figure out what it is. So, having said that, let me give you a couple of things that I think might help you. First of all, call reluctance is not really call reluctance, and it's not really fear of rejection. What it is, it's fear of the embarrassment of rejection. The embarrassment ultimately is the issue. So what you need to do is you need to take the potential or the risk of that embarrassment out of the scenario, out of the formula. So how do you do that? Don't expect people to do too much cold calling. Here's an interesting question. If you're the sales manager, would you want to go out and cold call all day? The bottom line to it is you need to make it warm and or hot. In other words, people respond to something that's sent out. People are told that you're going to contact them. Utilize some sort of direct response. Have some sort of a referral program to soften that kind of thing. And then you're going to find that people are less reluctant. And the more success they have, success breeds success breeds success. Now, as a general rule, one of the things that you also want to communicate, this is as old as the hills, there's a significant difference between a personal rejection and a business refusal. In most cases, it's a business refusal that people tend to internalize and take personally. You need to work very hard to communicate that. What I'm going to suggest to you is you need to reduce the times that your salespeople face that embarrassment of rejection. Soften the blow, have more of a strategic prospecting / marketing scenario in place, and I think you'll see them being a lot more proactive.
Great, Bill. Thanks a lot. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, Andy.